And now, hi guys! Mom's gonna ask if I was talking to anyone. Happy Taco Tuesday! Thank you for the sub, Daddy. You guys hear me okay? Can you hear the music? Is everything? Let me know if I start cutting out or anything. IRL stream valid! Oh my god! Hi! I haven't seen you in forever. How are the plants? Yes, IRL stream. We're doing a special Taco Tuesday stream. It was voted, or not voted, it was unlocked during my subathon. So, Tuesday time. Hi Taco! Hey Daddy, hey Movin', thank you for the work. I hope your work goes well. Kayla! I know Kindle was ready, Kindle was waiting. I started with a little bit of a late start. I pressed the start button like on time, and then the computer goes, "You don't have it basically the video codecs, so we can't stream. You need to update. You need to update your NVIDIA drivers." And this laptop, it is so slow. So it was just like the past 13 minutes have just been me waiting for the laptop to update a single driver so that we could press the start button. I'm gonna make you hungry? I hope so. Unfortunately, I cannot send you guys tacos. We discussed it. I would have to start like a meal prep business. Am I wearing gray sweatpants? Yes. Fit check. I like this outfit. I have to keep you muted in here or you'll get an echo. Yeah. My voice is gonna echo through the whole house. So I have you guys over here on my tablet as well, which currently is like hiding behind 12,000 spices. Hello, show me the chat. Do I have to refresh you? Good. Stream manager. I think it's good. Oh god, no, that's not what I want to press. I've never used the mobile stuff before. There is egg and ribs in the oven. Awesome. So let me first, there you guys go. You guys go there. Found you. So yeah, there will be a little message from Nightbot. I don't have my third-party software up here because I made the executive decision that this laptop was not good enough to run another piece of software. Oh, this reminds me that I need to get work. Will captions work? I'm trying. I don't know if they'll work. It says click to start, but it doesn't. I think it's because I'm using Firefox. Very apologetic. I also turned on, like, there are experimental captions on OBS right now, and apparently they're on, but like I don't know how to look at them. So I don't know if anything's working. There might be like 3 layers of captions, or there might be none. Tacos, hey Hannah! Oh, I didn't open it all the way. I got distracted halfway through. This is my real life. How are you guys doing today, by the way? We're gonna get started. Just by the way, I don't cook. And I was asking my mom stuff before the stream, and she was like, I think it'll be funnier if I don't tell you how to do that. So if I'm doing something really wrong, please help me. She was like, I want to set you up to fail, my mother. Put this over here. There are too many things here. Because the groceries came like just before this. We have everything now. So, what are we making? I should have made like a thing so you guys could see, but no. Instead, we're gonna use pieces of paper. So they're called easy. I was looking for short recipes, like not like a ton of ingredients, so I didn't have to buy a lot of things. So they're like easy, simple. But it's backwards for you. Awesome. I'll just read it. You can hear it. Picture. Look at the picture. Beautiful. It's a breakfast taco, so it has eggs and bacon and cilantro that we didn't get and green onions. I just doesn't like green things, so it's fine. Cheese? There's cheese and everything. I always put cheese. Good day today. I work early! So getting to play some Skyrim, but that sounds like Yes. And then I also, this one has a teeny tiny picture, but you can imagine ground beef. The camera. This camera doesn't. Oh God! It did it, but late. There we go. Come back. Come back to me. Oh God, I don't have like settings for it, so now I'm just a blur. I'm a blur in your mind. Hello, Ruben. How are you? So we're also making some ground beef tacos. Apparently it's the best ground beef recipe ever, which I seriously doubt, but sure. This is kind of what we normally have here. We have like those, those yellow packages that just have tacos on them in there. That's what we have here. You're doing all right. How are you doing, pretty lady? Oh yeah, I don't mind the boob tape. I taped up my boobs so that we don't accidentally get under boob. Because anyone who knows me for a while on the stream knows, like, don't wear a bra. I refuse. So I had to take them up. Oh, ears. Okay, I'll be right back. My ears are downstairs. We can do ears. Running. Oh. Back. I don't think I've ever shown you guys that I have the whole ear box now because of how many ears I have. You have some options, Roscoe. Also, hello. Bunny ears are on. Also, I might have to turn on the air conditioning because whenever I get started in stream, my adrenaline goes and I get really sweaty. And also, we're gonna have the oven on. So if I turn it on, you guys can hear it. Let me know. We have sparkly black ones, and then we have two fuzzy ones. Ones are more pink and more white. If you go. Let's go with my outfit. The cat ears. Sparkly. Okay. In they go. I think they're... There you are. Alright. This is what I was telling you. Alright, so the other page is just ground beef tacos. So like, hey mom. Like ground beef and tomato in it and a bunch of taco spices and more cheese, and we've got salsa and lettuce and stuff so that we cats are like flowers. I think there's a lot of plants that cats can't, like lilies. They can't eat lilies. We had a bit of a crisis during my marriage ceremony where we didn't have enough space to carry the flowers home, and there were lilies in there because lilies are my favorite flower. And I keep cutting out a lot. Okay, we can fix that. Thank you. I was asking for that because I have the threshold pretty high on my noise gate because like you can hear everything in here. So I did, yeah, we have a lot of little things to put on top, but honestly my brother and my mom don't like a lot of toppings, so it'll just be normal. I'll put the most stuff on for you guys. The audio and video also is out of sync. I can't fix that if they're out of sync for you. Are they out of sync for other people, or is it just Roscoe? Because that might be Twitch, but also might be the fact that this laptop is very slow. So it's basically, it's doing its best, but this is all I've got upstairs. We turned the quality down a lot just to get the encoding, and like my bitrate is fine, and we're not dropping any, or we're dropping like 6.3% of our frames, which isn't that much. Just watching your PC? Okay. And the syncing is good. Sorry, 6.5%. Draco! Sorry, the love command isn't working because of my third-party software not being here, but thank you for the love. I appreciate it. Are there captions for you anywhere? I have like 3 different kinds turned on, but I can't tell. What? Yes. We're okay, Law. There's no captions anywhere? Okay. I have like 3 different kinds of captions, but see if Chrome will do it. I try not to run Chrome because of how intense it is. She's gone already. She's in the chat. Restore pages. No thank you. Gooseman codes, dashboard. Go. Alright, we'll move my mic towards us. Oh, I gotta live on Twitch on this too? Come on. I need captions for I just need captions. Come on, Chrome. And now I need an SMS code. No, that's Firefox. No, don't go away. There we go. Take me to the captions. Extension, captions. Start. Allowed to use my microphone? Yes, please. Hello. Are there captions now, Draco? Hopefully that'll work now. There should be captions that you can turn on and off with stream captions now. You too tired? Awake! Okay, we gotta start cooking. Cause as Mom said, I have just put ground beef on the. I'll put it in the fridge. Come here. Let's me on top of fruit like a bad girl. Alright, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do bacon because it needs to bake, obviously. Well, it doesn't have to, but we're gonna bake it. And so we need to preheat the oven and do that first. Then we'll get. I'll have to leave in because the light on this is bad that you can't see anything. It's 400. Don't make you put you a timeout. Don't time out Taco. It's the taco stream. You can't do that. Alright, I can read you guys here too. We're also I'm gonna get scissors for this package. I think you're supposed to be able to open it because it has little things along the side, but I can't open it. I'm no good at that. You are full of like bacon grease. Are we good? Oh, you've got a little wall. I don't know if we need all this bacon. I mean, we can just eat the bacon. Chaos sad? No, Chaos. You had to buy a new oven and you found out gas stove tops don't exist here. Huh, interesting. Can't ban taco from the taco stream. That's what I'm saying. Oh man, this bacon, this is some long bacon. Look at this. Long bacon. Come here, bacon. You can't let it sit on here and be placed on here nicely in rows. I'm gonna have to wash my hands. We'll see about that. Well, that's true. If you break like TOS or something, then we will probably need to ban you. But Taco doesn't break the rules. He's a good boy. Okay, that's all we need probably. Oh god. Alright, we're gonna bye, goodbye. So you wanna leave this here until the oven is preheated so that we can do that. Oh, it's Roscoe. Okay. And I'm gonna get the bag Mom rejected earlier. Let's put our bacon in that, so it is not wasted. We do not want to waste the bacon. Bacon. Taco just gets thrown in horny tail. Hey Nevu! Hello! I'm reading you guys here too. I didn't preheat the oven beforehand. I was distracted by the concept that my computer was like, you don't have any video drivers. We don't know how to stream. Sorry. My bad. I'll preheat it now. It'll be fine, you guys. It'll be fine. Bacon. Where should we put the bacon? Next to cheese. Hang out with me. Okay. Where the cheese was. The stream is earlier than normal. That's because we're doing Taco Tuesday. And okay. I pulled on the mic cord. We have to do it before dinner. Yeah. Subathon unlocked. All right, what do we do now? I feel like, okay. Cook ground beef fully. I don't know how long that's gonna take. I don't know what that means. So, okay, fully. We have to do two things. We have to do eggs and we have to do ground beef. I think I'm gonna start with the beef. They're somehow back out of sync. I don't know why. What do you say? Make sure it's not pink. Okay. So they'll take about the same amount of time. It's basically, yeah, it says brown on it. How much do you turn oven stuff on for? Never done that before. Oh, I don't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, ground beef. I know how Chef does this all the time. Like, it's so distracting. There's you guys, I can't like read all of chat, and then there's like stuff I'm supposed to be doing. What do you want, Fong? No, F off. You know elbows don't belong on cutting board? Sure they do. Elbows on the table, always. All right, olive oil on here. It's got its own spout. It was unexpected. You want me to just drizzle it? Do you have a particular amount? He wants me to do a tablespoon, specifically. So here's the one thing I'm confused about, right? This is the question I was asking Mom. Just like put it the whole thing. She's laughing at me from over in her bedroom. Or just pick it up and like throw it all in the pan? Like, do I have to do something on a cutting board? Like, what do I do? What do I do to that? I don't know. I mean, I in theory, I can just put the whole thing in the pan and then like, whoa, the audio? What, Valid? What happened? Is it just you? It is just you. It's all just you. I was hoping that when I turned around you guys can hear me okay. Yeah, you can, it's fine. But I have to do something. Up here. Oh boy, that's that. Olive oil decided it's going to go in the sides of the pan and not in the middle. I don't want that. It went staticky for a minute. I'm sorry that everything is. I'm sorry. It's probably me. It's probably the setup. and I can't, there's nothing more I can do to make it better. It's just that this laptop really shouldn't be streaming. At least my internet's good. Do you have an easy open, or do you want me to just cut you open? It looks like... Yes. Yes. Got it. So no, nobody knows what to do with ground beef. It's just me versus the ground. What? Okay, that's what I was gonna do. Just throw it in, she said. Just throw it in. I don't know what that means. Type, I can't hear you. She's just yelling at me from across the room. The house. Cast iron pan is stainless. Do I stainless? Yeah, destroy it. Turn it into tiny little ground beef chunks. Oh, this is so loud. Holy shit. Is it loud for you guys? I have this little thing. So I'm using a spatula. I feel like this isn't sharp enough. Come on, little friend. Now, see this is where if I was a real like food and drink streamer, I would have a camera attached like up here so you guys could see what I'm doing, but you can't. You just have to trust. You just have to trust that she's doing it right. All right, really mashing it up here. I feel like it needs to be a bit more cooked before I can get any smaller than this. Because it wants to stick to each other. It wants to be friends. You're not the one eating it, so you're like, it's fine if it gets destroyed. It's fine if it's raw and terrible. Alright, now, in the spirit of attempting to do 2 types of tacos at the same time, do I also just leave this to cook a little bit, or do I need to stay here? Ah! The oven is preheated. I didn't know it was. You love that the mics are stream bombing? Yeah. It's here. It's helping. I'm just hoping to catch you when I'm turned around. That's why it's up here. I had like a better spot for it, like down here. But it won't attach to the table because the table's edges are rounded, and that makes it not like it. Oh, there we go. It's cooking. It's turning brown. All right, we're gonna let that keep going, and I'm gonna get one of these. We're gonna put the bacon in. I think it said the bacon needs to go for 15 to 20 minutes? 18 to 20 minutes, very specific. You would drain the fat from it? That is in the instructions. But I don't know how to do that either. How do you not lose the you know what? It's fine. We'll make a guess. This is seconds, I think. Go on, we need 18 to 20 minutes. otherwise known as 19. Got it. A strainer? We can't just like tip it over the sink? I have to put my ground beef in a colander? What? It's still pink. I'm going to wait till it's not pink anymore, because that's what the instructions say. They say when it's done cooking, it's not pink anymore. You want to drain the excess grease, and then we add tomato sauce and spices and stuff. I think I need to get in here and flip them around a little bit so they get some more of it. I need to chop it up better. This is no good for chopping. There are a lot of methods. Do I attempt the Sarah just stands over the sink and like holds it with the spatula and hopes that we don't lose all the ground beef method? Is that a correct method? Also, I feel like you guys can hear me fine, but it's probably really loud. Me like, so we're gonna move the mic back. That's basically what I'm saying. Instead of tomato sauce, I'm gonna follow my recipe, but I will, because I made my mom buy tomato sauce. But I paid for the tomato sauce, I use the tomato sauce. But next time, I will attempt that instead. How do I make the ground beef smaller? Don't laugh at me! Mom's laughing at me. At least give me tips in chat. Mom's just laughing at me, exclaiming and not understanding what I'm doing. And, oh, there's a very raw one that got lost on the edge. Sir, I require you to cook. Oh, we lost a couple children off the side. I feel like if they're smaller, then they'll cook better. So I'm trying to like make them tinier. But I feel like I'm chasing them around the bowl. Like, come here, you little shit. Man, at least I know how to make eggs. I get a breakfast food. I like breakfast food. It's very delicious. So when I have a choice to make that like I need to cook, I'm gonna make some breakfast food for myself. Destroy. It must be Godzilla of the ground beef and turn it into tiny little rubble. No more ground beef cities. No more ground beef families. Only dust. I don't know if I can get it smaller. I feel like there should be a specific tool for this. A little slicer. I feel like why do I feel like a pastry knife would be really good at this? Like a pastry cutter? You guys know what I'm talking about? I think we have one. They're like, you guys know what a pastry cutter is? If I say pastry cutter, you guys know what that is, right? Right? You know what a pastry cutter is here. I feel like that would work really well on ground beef. Just get in there, slice it off into little tiny ground beef chunks. Alright, I'm not seeing any pink anymore. I don't want to overdo it. Here, I think it wants it on low afterwards. Medium heat. No, that's something else. This one. Drain it. Yeah, reduce the heat to low. Okay, I'll be back.
They make utensils specifically for ground beef? See, I knew something like that existed. Alright, I'm gonna try to just drain it over the sink, like a crazy person. Wait, how would you do it? How would you do it? Don't say, oh dear. She says, oh dear, in the background. I can see her on her bed. She's laughing at me, making fun of me. What? I don't know if it has a cover. There are covers. I can use one. Just try it, she says. I don't like that idea. That idea sounds like it's gonna disaster. Not in here though. The covers are in here. I don't think we have a cover that's big enough. I don't know where it is. I can only find baby covers. No one than that. I know. I've seen it. That's not in here. I can just encapsulate it with this.
The chunks are quite big. You could use a colander. That way you wouldn't anything for sure. I don't think it will go through those holes.
It really won't. Okay, colander it is. We've decided on the colander
I
method.
think that's the safest way.
The safest way for me to do stuff. Oh my god. I feel like a child.
Because if you pour it in, you're not going to lose it.
I couldn't make them any smaller.
Alright.
Come in, kids. And out. Okay. There we go. Ground beef. I tried. The chunks aren't very big, are very small. I did my best. And it's not pink. All right. You see it there. And I'm gonna throw this up because this is like raw meat sitting on the counter. That can't be good. All right, so now we need to do spices and also need to get the tomato sauce in. So we'll do that last because I just need to pour this in. I'm gonna make some spices. So they couldn't find any powder. So there's only garlic and onion salt. So we're not gonna add any salt. Because that'd be a lot of salt. So we're gonna make a taco spice. Make taco spice. We've got some chili powder. This also has cumin in it, but we don't have cumin, and I didn't want to. Mom was like, "You have to pay for it," and I was like, "Oh, groceries are really expensive right now, right? I have to pay for it, and it's expensive to buy full spices that like we don't have." So I decided to nix the cumin. I feel bad for it. How much of this do you want? I mean, it's chili powder. Yeah, we want a tablespoon of chili powder. Chili powder. Yep. I'm afraid that they won't eat it if it's too much. No taco seasoning? I'm making taco seasoning. I have my own spices. We've got chili powder and oregano and garlic salt and onion salt. And we'll put it in with the tomato sauce and it should be good. It sounds good. These things are so worn. Like, can you guys, like, I can't, it's half a teaspoon. But hot damn, is that just absolutely worn right off. Right, hello. Win. Do the do. Where's the spice? It's here. Cheers, SBO. How are you doing? We're attempting to cook. Please send all of your good cooking vibes, as I do not know how this is gonna go. So these are all new. We had garlic powder and it was like stuck to the bottom of the thing because it hadn't been used in so long. We had spices. These are my grandmother's. They were my grandmother's spices, And she hadn't used them in so long that they were just dying. There's like 2 things in the spice drawer. She doesn't use spices, she doesn't believe in them. But SBO, how are you doing? You despise Mountain Dew? I don't know if you can be here, Roscoe. Mountain Dew is like my lifeblood. Where? What? It had perforations, but they stopped. Okay. There we go. They're open now. Ah! Betty! Thank you for the Betties! I don't know how many of those are because it's all in ones. Oh, quarter of each. And since these aren't powders, they're salts, we're gonna, normally this would include some salt, but we're not gonna put salt in. But not find in powders. What is your favorite soda then, Roscoe? What do you like to drink? It's a mixing spoon, right? You're not a fan of soda? You just drink water, Taco? Milk? There, we made our own taco spice. This. And we're gonna get some tomato sauce. If you had to choose Fanta, see, I don't like Fanta. Oh. It just made a dent. Try again elsewhere. It opened it, come on. Is this broken? Our can opener. It won't run along the edge. This one's brand new, okay. Taco's allowed to not be a fan of soda. I've got it.
Got it?
Kind of. It keeps stopping.
You don't have it clipped down, right?
Come here. Oh, you don't want to come here. Not in the camera.
And you kind of angled it.
Well, that's what it did when I punctured it and then...
I'm not sure I can save it.
No, we gotta save the tomato sauce.
Did you hear it click?
Yeah, that's what it did. Maybe I was spitting it the wrong way. Is there a way?
I've used a can opener before, I swear. I've successfully used a can opener before. You like a soda called Passion. A passion fruit soda. That sounds really good, actually. It's alright. Mom saved me. Mama Lou to the rescue. I really mangled the top, you guys. It's a disaster. Oh god. How do I get this off? It's just sharp metal. It sounds friggin' delicious. Passion fruit's a good flavor. I like anything fruit flavored usually, like berry stuff too. Berry's my favorite. If I'm gonna pick, it's like strawberry flavored stuff and then like down. If Mountain Dew, no, I don't know. If Mountain Dew came in like a fresh strawberry kind of lemonade flavor, I'd like that. None of their flavors are like that. They're always really syrupy. I think, like, one of the reasons I don't like the Mountain Dew, like, extra, the other flavors that they have is because they're all syrupy. All right, we're gonna pour this in and then move in with the spices. Go quick. Go tomato sauce. Oh, yeah, get that on your phone. Good. Good job. Let's put the phone over here. Spices. Bring you guys with me. You also like ginger beer. Yeah, I think you talked about that before, or at least somebody did, and we did like a whole lookup on it to like understand the path from calling it ginger beer to it not usually being alcoholic. I don't remember it now, but I definitely looked it up at one point. Alright, let's get all this ground beef covered. Kind of chop it up a little bit more since apparently I have ginormous ground beef chunks. It's just chunky beef. Chunky beefaroni. That's what we're doing today. Covered. We like beer down here. I don't like beer. It's gross. But so is wine. I shouldn't really have an opinion on them because I'm more of like a cocktail person. Like I like alcohols that no longer taste like alcohol, and then you stand up and then you fall over because you didn't realize that you were getting drunk. Those are the most delicious. Foster's is cheap beer. I don't know what Foster's beer is. I would only recognize like a few different beers, like Coors Light. Coors is a beer. Molson Canadian beer. It's a big deal here. Oh, that looks good. That is some taco beef right there, all together, all covered in spice and tomato sauce. Oh, that looks good. Alright, is there anything else you want me to do, recipe? Allow to simmer. Good, because I gotta make the other tacos. So simmer all you will, friends. We have to make eggs. Big cans. Big ol' cans of beer. What am I doing? You guys wanna see? It looks really good. Wish I could just... Taco filling looks delicious. Yeah, I'm gonna leave you together. Be friends. Check on that every once in a while, make sure it's not getting too much. Very red. The camera makes reds more red. Like, things are very red on camera compared to the other colors. Like in real life, so this seems kind of yellow, right? This seems yellow and this seems red. In real life, this is green. So, like it's a lime green, but you can't really tell because it really pumps up red undertones. So, I don't know why my camera's like that, but it's very red. It's more red than it is in real life. It's a little more like red, brown, maroon. Right, focus. Focus, Sarah. Eggs. All right, we want 4 eggs. 4 eggs, whisk. We got this, right? I got this, right? Yeah, for skin tones to look good. That makes sense why they did that. But yeah, like I have a red sweater that sometimes I'll wear and it'll just blow out the whole camera. It's all red sweater. Should have gotten a paper towel. Oh! Our bacon's gonna be done. I hear you! I'm here. I understand. It's screaming at me. Oh, again. Okay, hang on. We're gonna back burner this real quick. Oh, it is covered in grease. Oh my god. Come here, little friends. I know, we need to get it on something else. Paper towel. We need a paper towel. That's what I need. pieces, but yes, just break into a million little ones. That is fine. And let's get this buddy. I don't really have space over there, so we're going over here. Okay, I don't think I should touch these with my hands right this second. I'm just gonna use for egg. Don't really have anything else that'll work, and I want to use this for eggs. So I'm going to wipe this off. There we go. My laptop has this horrible camera. It's like it's 360p back, so it's not even a laptop. Basically, oh okay. I don't know what those are. Oh. Mirror baby strips. I'm trying to balance it because there's a bunch of baby grease. I don't want it to get all over the place. There we go. Come here. Everybody up. Time to go. Onto the paper towel. Yeah, we gotta wipe these off or pat them off, and we'll leave them to dry a little bit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna crumble them up and put them in the tacos. There we go. Okay. I shouldn't need these anymore. Let me read this. You use it as a small, easy to stuff in a bag laptop for trips. It's a tablet with a stand and detachable keyboard. Ah, I got like a Bluetooth one for this, and it didn't really work. Like the Bluetooth works. It's just it's very. I don't know how to explain. Like the keyboard is so light that it's like taken over by it. Here we go. There. So we should let the bacon rest while we do these eggs. So I got all of these in, and then I got very distracted. Show by my faces. Egg. There we go. Yeah, make sure to do it so they're all bubbly and so they're nice and fluffy. But it hurts a little bit. Egg. I like how it's telling me how to do scrambled eggs, which is good. I'm glad that I regret turning that one on. Okay, you can stay back here on low. You're coming back to medium. You're off. It's telling me how to scramble eggs, which I think is fun. So our whole like our whole stove tops, like all of them are crooked. So it's a little bit hard to work with them. I'm sure it's fine. All right. You're just waiting for snarky comments from Babalu. She seems to be relaxing and put her snarkiness away for now. Alright, it's gotta heat up a little bit before I can do anything with it. So while that happens, let's put some of this stuff away so that I can have space to do taco assembly.
God, please, no!
No putting the garbage away? No? I'm not allowed? Why no? Just a tad of tomato sauce. Where did I put? Well, this is the dry cloth. Mystery. I'm looking for the washcloth. Oh, it's where it's supposed to be. Touch this out. That's good. Here, these. We'll do like a Sarah needs to wash this section, and this is just because there's tomato sauce here. How does that happen? The other side is the dishwasher is clean side. Okay, all of this is. How are you doing? Oh, it's starting. They're not cast iron. Unless you mean. They're stainless steel. Supposedly non-stick, as far as I know. Yes. So when I'm like confused or like I'm not sure, it's because a lot of this stuff that I'm using belonged to my grandmother, who lived here before us. So it's like, I don't know, I didn't buy it. It wasn't there when it was purchased. But as far as I know, it's all stainless steel with just like a black coating. They were never non-stick. They're never non-stick. It's a lie. It's lies and slander. This is like not enough eggs. Or three. Well, maybe in a taco. I'm kind of like regretting spaghetti not doing more eggs. Because like my brother could just eat all of this. I guess we're doing two types of tacos, so it'll be fine. Alright. He's good. Okay. Never. Yeah, I wish it was a little bit less noise to like do stuff, but these are so loose. They just make all the noise. Ooh. Okay. We got our 2 fillings. We're gonna put some stuff back, especially the cold stuff. It needs to go back. Oh. So we got cheese, we've got some green onions. It wants me to... Now I need to saute those. Jeez. I forgot I was... Oh, Jesus Christ. I forgot I was supposed to saute the green nuggets into the eggs. Absolute. You need new stovetops? Yeah. We need a whole new stove is what we need. You know what that costs, Roscoe? What? You know what we don't have? What? Alright. So I forgot to do a part, but 1, this is on top. 2, there's not enough eggs. So you just see the prices of stoves. Yeah, everything's so expensive now. I thought I had a medium pan. Someone used the other pan. Ah! Victory. Hi, Taco. Good to see you're still chilling. My green onions. Oh, I shouldn't have put that away yet. The olive oil one. We're good. It's safe. We're gonna saute some green onions, you guys. That's what we're up to right now. I need a knife. You guys, Canada is shockingly more economically fucked. Yes, it's true. Everything is so expensive. Like, everything. Don't buy anything anymore. Don't eat. Eating is for people with money. That's all I've got. This is fine. This will work. This is one of ours. She just has a knife. No big. It wants me to do something specific though, so let me just breathe. Alright, cut off the ends though. I don't want these bits. Fire roots. These haven't been washed. Right. Hold on. Hang on. I should rinse these. Probably. Ah yes, you have money because you're a corner. I kind of forgot you were a corner for a bit there. Like, the whole conversation has come back to me now, but I forgot. I love the smell of green onions. I don't know, probably because like not a ton of people want to be a corner. Like, it's not like a highly sought after job, so finding people to be the corner. I had to do less at a time. So we're gonna saute this bit, and then the other half we're gonna put on top. Sorry, was it my setup going crazy again? I said that I forgot you were a corner. Oh, because you were watching an ad. So, sorry. on Twitch, if you have ad blocker on, they will specifically push ads to you whether you are subscribed or not. So, so the fact that you're getting ads, you'll get less ads on channels that you're not subscribed to, but if you are subscribed, you'll get more. All right, get whichever ad block Kayla has. They don't have that on there. Ooh, goodbye. That one's not coming with us. You're not coming with us to the saute party. I turned it off. Oh, God. I opened the fridge and a block of Havarti cheese just fell on my foot. Just Havarti from the sky. There we go. Yeah, there's just not enough eggs. We do not have enough eggs. So we're gonna saute the green onions and then fold in these 2 eggs. With them, and then add the other ones. That should be a fine fix for me being like, oh, I forgot that they wanted me to do something special. All right, a good time again. See, I gotta get it all bubbly. Can you guys even see the bubble? Yeah, there you go. If I bend it too much, we'll lose it. I don't want to do that. Okay. We're working, little friends. So we'll chop up some of these ones for... Fix the problem by moving the tabs you're lurking in onto your actual PC. Ah, I see. Yeah, I noticed it like pretty quickly after I started lurking in a lot of streams, is that I just get pushed ads. I was getting pushed ads on my own stream manager for my own stream from using AdBlock. So I was just like, okay, rude, first of all. So now I turn it off if I'm watching someone I'm subscribed to, but turn it on if I am watching someone I'm not subscribed to, because I just get less ads. But yeah, this is Twitch's way of like stopping you from using the ad block, like discouraging you. You get no ads when it works? Hopefully it will work more. Like, fuck ads, honestly. We don't have a choice. You can't turn them off. Ooh. Our little green nugget friends are browning this time, I think. Yeah. Everybody together now. My AdBlock works on Twitch plus browser YouTube. Ah. Yeah, I don't use AdBlocker on my tablet or my phone. I don't bother. Usually mostly because I use like my tablet to watch people overnight while I fall asleep, and I'm like, better give them ad revenue while I'm just sleeping here. Yeah, each ad makes you so, it's like 10 cents or something. And then like Twitch takes half. It's like so little. I've never when it's like, it tells me I made like 50 cents, and I'm like, wow, Thanks. Thanks for letting me know I made 50 cents on ads because you're an asshole. All right, friends, get together. All right. What do you guys think? Pretty good? Huh? I'm ready. Let's get this show on the road. Alright, nobody's trying out. Okay, I'm gonna finish these. And then we're gonna split some stuff up into different bowls for people to use if they want to. I'm gonna put some pepper on the eggs too. Really happy. Can you come cook? Can you come cook? Can I come cook for you? I don't normally cook. This is all experimental. Me in the kitchen. I don't think you want me to cook for you. Right. Let's move everything over here and get a better layout going. How are you, by the way, Kayla? I don't think I've seen you that much since I came back. Or since I stopped playing Subnautica, I guess. It's just, Subnautica nights were like, oh, Kayla's gonna be there, but now we're done Subnautica. Played Fable on Mondays instead. Not the same. Out of our way. Bacon over here. Alright, so it's been a week. The last couple days were rough, but you'll be okay, just like work or life. Also, no new funny Subway customer stories for us, is there? Maybe a little bit too small. They're all bent. Green onion in the fridge. These away. Trying to clear some space for tacos. For the taco layout. We need this too. We didn't want to shred lettuce or buy an entire head of lettuce, so I'm just gonna remove lettuce from a salad bag that Mom will use throughout the week. She suggested it. It's pretty brilliant. Good idea. 10 out of 10 mom ideas. Both. I'm sorry. So the lady who threw some at you is back. Oh, I guess she wasn't too put off in the end. She needed her Subway. In the end, the love for Subway wins over everything. A wolf spider was in your window today? Oh, and you got don't just throw you got disowned in the middle of all of that. What? What? Got to some Lamau. What? I mean, the wolf spider is pretty big, though. I got it. It's a pretty big deal. It is pretty pressing. Hey, Cairo! I bet the griffin is spitting spiders. Are you a fan of the Disney animated series called The Owl House? I've never heard of it. What is that? Also, welcome in. Welcome into the taco stream. And me trying to figure out how many little bowls I need. I think I need 2 more, but I'm not sure. We'll see. Anyone for cheese? Obviously. There is a story about the zone, but it's a story. It's like it's probably not a happy story, obviously. I am sorry to hear that, though. I think it's a bad thing for you, right? Don't want, unless you're like, hell yeah, I'll get out of there. Usually. Spencer might want more. I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna do double cheese bowls. And then one for the salad. And one for bacon. One for some mixed greens. I don't know why I said it like that. You not have an open flame? You know, when everything has an easy open, like, like a slit or a perforation, when something doesn't have an easy open, it's very confusing. Like, why? Now I'm also interested in, like, what is the Owl House? You know, carrots in your tacos, that's fine, right? Normal. Putting salad in the taco. How it goes now. Everybody get it. She said to put it in another bag. And it's like, I think it can just be clipped. It didn't really open it that much. Or maybe we don't have any clips. We don't have a big one. There's a little one. Oh wow. Too long to read. This is the too long to read? Your mom left when you were 3 and then returned till you were 16. Oh gosh. Whoa! I mean, I'm sorry about your dad, but it kind of sounds like you don't need that in your life anyway. Is that like... trying to fix and rebuild something. He should be supportive. He's your parent. That's their job. Right? Plates. Taco plates. Have the bacon. He's just an arse. Could say I'm saddest or disappointing. Yeah, I get that. I have some tumultuous relationship with my father. He doesn't live here, you tell. Tumultuous is the right word, right? I'm like second guessing my understanding of the English language. This is greasy. Trying to take all the grease off, but it's still greasy. In a good way though. It's bacon. You want bacon to be kind of like it's clogging your arteries, you know? At least that's how I want my bacon. If I'm gonna eat it, it might as well, you know, really just take down your health with it. Not like you're making good choices like that anyway. Okay. There is. There's tomato sauce in the weirdest places. I don't know how I did this. A little impressive, I would say. I don't know how I did it, but it's a little impressive. So, into the place where everything goes now. Bring this up. But yeah, I am sorry that I'm sorry about the wolf spider, mostly. That sounds terrifying. No wolf spider. You have to burn the house down now. I think that is correct. Don't mind me just like every time I'm trying to do something, I'm just like runs in circles because I don't know where I'm going half the time. Don't spend that much time. Okay. I want to show you guys this stuff, but I don't have my like droid cam. What's the right way? I mean, I'll finish and then I'll show you. I'll pick up the camera. I'll pick up the whole PC. I'll take it with me. We got some little tortillas, the flour tortillas. I discussed doing different stuff, but obviously, like with everything else that I did today, I made choices not to like do as many or like as much, just to keep the price down because of how expensive everything is in Canada right now, and has been for a while. Alright. Start with our breakfast tacos. We have beautiful eggs with some green onion in there. We'll try to take out the green onion for Spencer because he doesn't like it. Doesn't have to know. We'll make this. Oh, goodbye, pieces of egg. Yes, they're out. They're out for now. Find the ones that are less green oniony. This is causing issues. Immediate problems. Alright, see if we can pick it. No green onions. He's nothing. He knows nothing. This is good. Okay. Put the rest in Mom's plate. So I think the egg ones can have like more egg because there's only like cheese and bacon that you can really, and like other extra green onion that you can really add. I'm gonna stuff them. Little extra egg. Additional eggy. Oh, okay. Yeah. It's escaping. There you go. Get Spencer one that's not. Really wash my hands. I mean, they're fine. They've just been touching like cheese and stuff. Feel a little bad somehow. So it's literally just food. I'm making them. Okay. This one's good. Yeah, it can close. It's good. Okay. They close. They're great. Hey, Taco. The tacos are almost ready. They're probably gonna have to be heated up a little bit just because it took me a while. The egg ones. This is Spencer's plate, so he's only gonna want cheese. I'm gonna just add extra taco meat to his, so he'll not want anything else. Probably too much. Oh well. It's all good. These here. Okay, I think we're good. You want all the tacos? You better get here fast then. Alright, I'm gonna move this out of the way with the Mountain Dew and stuff. Leave this, bring this over to the table in case somebody's breaks. Can you have one? Yeah, like I said, get here fast. You gotta run. You're gonna have to make a freaking run for it. I'll do the rest of the cleanup afterwards. What do I do with an entire can of tomato sauce? That's like I only use half a cup. What do you do with this? Can Jace have one? Should Jace have one? What do you do with an entire can of tomato sauce? I like put it, I like shrink wrap it? Is that fine? Give it to Creeper. He's in Florida. Alright. I will move these over to like the table where we're gonna eat, but here we go. Ooh, color coded. Ooh, Florida gang? I know quite a few people from Florida actually. I lived there for a while. Alright, you guys ready? I'm gonna bring you over to this. Someone should probably clip this bit for people who can't be here. Clips were requested. I don't know if I don't know about this particular. We're gonna just shut the light out. The plug. I don't know how long it lasts without the plug. If I unplug it, can it go for a few minutes? Yeah, the laptop.
Go for
Like if I just want to bring them over to see.
last 30 minutes.
Okay, okay. Quick.
I haven't
Speed.
tried for a while, so.
Oh,
Oops.
we're attached to the. Oh, he's asleep?
Yeah.
Well, I made him a chocolate plate. Alright, you guys. Hello. Oh! Uh-oh. Here, we'll just manage this. There we go.
Yeah, you didn't need the whole.
Well, I did because it's attached to the computer. Da-da-da! Taco! So we're gonna be having these for dinner. Early dinner, apparently. I thought this would take me longer. Looks good, Taco. Did I do okay? Here we go. Alright, we're headed back. All we need. Mom's just watching. You ready to eat, mother? Hmm?
11
Yeah, 11 TA co-lover. Mom says. Yes. That's you. That's you now. That's hilarious. I can't believe you thought that was his name. Where are we? Oh. Wrong one. Where's the... This one. This one. Everything get plugged back in to something. There we go. I'm back. I got 1,000,000 points. That's a lot of points. Yeah, you're probably gonna want to warm yours up a little bit more, just cause, especially the eggs, they lost a lot of heat. But I did keep the beef for 11 take co-lover 11. Yeah. Perfect.
Are you gonna talk for a while? Or?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, sign off, I guess, the rate somewhat.
Okay, I'll see you from there.
Okay, I'll come get you in a little bit. All right, you guys hear me all right? I'm kind of behind the mic a little bit. I thought the stream would be a little bit longer. I kind of feel bad. But I nailed doing it at the same time. No taste test? Oh, you're right. Okay, I'll get mine. 1 second. So, this is Spencer's. We'll have to shrink wrap that because he's asleep. And I made this one mine because it has more. Okay, taste test time. I want to do, obviously, everything needs cheese. The most important. A Reese's cup? I'm a huge cheese person, but cheese and everything. And then, some bacon bits for this one. Might have too much filling. And I have some onion. And this is literally just salad greens I have turned into lettuce because we don't have shredded lettuce. No skin marks, what? And yeah, I'm gonna get a spoon for that actually. It's just giving me like just the liquid I want. Heat of the salsa. Yeah, I definitely did too much. We're probably gonna have to double wrap. Worth it. Right. Yeah, I'm the one who wanted all the toppings. Everybody else is not a topping person. Oh god. We're backing up. We're back. We did it. I have to like almost close the, there we go. We'll do this a little bit more. This note says touch and die with a smiley face because I left it overnight. Oh, you're right. Oh, hell yes. We'll call this the Izzy camera. I think she does this a lot when she's drawing. All right, see, I might have I can't. We'll just eat some of it out. Okay, first of all, ground beef good. I agree. I wish it wasn't so big. There we go. I got it. Oh, I destroyed it. I needed to hold on to it and I destroyed it. Oh god. Okay. Taste test. This is a very good idea. 10 out of 10. Poor taco. Stay there. I couldn't do it. I need to taste the other one. You wish that were me. Mmm. This is really good. My own cooking is good. Yes. But I needed a paper towel. I just ate through the paper towel today. You guys like my squishy floor mat for my fibro feet? Mom got them actually. All right, other one. Again, Sarah put too much stuff in it. Not as bad as the other one though. Breakfast. I think this needs to be warmed up. Mm. The bacon escaped. It needs to be warm, but very good. It's definitely got, I got breakfast wrap at a restaurant vibes. All right. Man, I'm over 2,000 points? Shit. Thank you, Taco. All right, so I have to warm these up anyway. Don't worry about it too much. But we do have to go because I do have to eat dinner with my mother, who doesn't want to be on stream. So we're gonna find somebody to raid into. Does anyone have a recommendation so I don't have to spend too much time browsing on this awful computer? See you, Kindle. Thank you for being my afternoon bot as well. I appreciate it. Like it's sitting up, you guys can't see me. Oh, it's because this is still tilted. Oh, Sarah stuff. You guys get to see me from this angle for once. So if I'm straight on, you can see that my nose is crooked. That's why I do this. I have a crooked nose. I was born with it. Nico didn't ban you. He did not. All right, nobody has any suggestions? I'll go look with my phone. Actually, you do it like, you can raid from, there's a thing on the tablet now that lets you raid easy. Raid channel. Who's live? We have Lady Astoria. She is playing, looks like Cult of the Lamb. We've got Wild Thembo. I do not recognize this at all. I don't know what it is. We've got Saze currently doing, gosh, is that Astoria? We could go to Astoria. We also have Henna, but we raided into her recently because she's playing the new Zelda game. Naifu Waifu is playing something. You know what? Actually, I would love to raid into Astoria or Naifu Waifu. Let's see what she's playing, and then we'll make a decision. Polls are hard for me on mobile, so if you have like a preference, let me know. But I'll let you guys know what Naifu Wife is doing. She only has 2 viewers right now. I thought it might be good to go see her. But Astoria doesn't have very many either. Astoria would be good in the afternoon. Oh, she's on her starting student scrim. She's gonna be playing Legend of Zelda. All right. Any preferences? Anyone besides Taco care where we're going? Because we'll probably go to the beautiful, lovely Lady Astoria, who's doing Cult of the Lamb. I think that's a good place to go. Lubot isn't here to do the raid message, so I don't think anything will. Never mind. Lubot is here. Lubot's here? It must be because it's turned on downstairs. That's impressive. Good work, Lubot. All right, it works. That's cool. All right, we're gonna go see Lydia Astoria. So if you are coming with me, please make sure to copy the raid message and give her all my love. I guess I'm coming in mobile. Thank you for the tacos. And I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of very strange, different stream that we did. This was a subathon unlock that we got to do because we hit that subathon goal. But we also are going to be doing later this summer. Mom and I are going to do a baking stream together as well, most likely, hopefully. So look forward to that happening too. And hopefully we will be able to stabilize the drop frame rate by then. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out with me. I'll be back tomorrow night for our normally scheduled program. What do they say? Usually scheduled program for Doom at our normal time. So yeah, I will see you guys then. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. I'm gonna go eat tacos now. Bye. This is our end screen. Quick. Quick. Quick.